right, welcome. And Robert and MaryAnn, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome, thank you, and welcome everyone. Let me just share my screen. So again, welcome. And thank you to the organizers of this event. We are happy to be here with you this evening. And we have only a limited time within which to make our presentation. So we want to get started right away. And we'll introduce ourselves, starting with my co-presenter.
So I am MaryAnn White Pickering, and I've been with the school now for 20 years. I'm a deaf parent, and I'm also work with the hearing group. Then later, I've moved. And so at first, my first language is ASL. That's what I use at home and at school as well. I've been in a deaf institution. You know, I grew up in a deaf institution, and this is actually, ASL is my first language, or my L1. And my parents taught us words, you know, to expose different words to us, ASL and words, English both. So we were actually reading at like 3 at night. It's so important. It was such an important time growing up until like age 6 with my family, you know, just learning the language. Then of course, I started teaching, and I've been a part of the deaf community and residential schools as well. So now I'm in a mainstreaming program, and, you know, children are missing so much information from home. You know, parents, it's important to teach the children the basics, even at home, when they're born and on and going forward. That's so very important for the exposure for language.
Okay, and I am Robert Parkinson, and I've been in deaf education for more than 20 years. I've worked in schools in Jamaica, South Carolina, DC, in Maryland. And I really do believe that at the heart of our presentation tonight is what I do believe, that for students to overcome this gap in their language development, it requires a language-rich environment that recognizes and embraces their uniqueness. Okay, and let us proceed. So MaryAnn and I belong to a group called the Closing the Language Gaps group. That's our work group. We're just one of 4. There is a student enrichment programs group, the accessibility resources group, family support programs. And at the heart of our work, all these groups were focused on, I'm sorry, just a sec. Something is wrong with this presentation. Let me close it for just a second. My video is not loading. Okay, as I was saying, so at the heart of the work that we're doing is we want to provide the resources, find those areas in which we can better support parents, and not just parents, but our teachers, our entire network, teachers, stakeholders. And we're grateful to Ms. Houston, Robin Houston, for allowing us this opportunity, because truly it has been a pleasure so far, and we look forward to greater things to come. Now, the Closing the Language Gaps group, we want to share with you our statement of purpose, and this is signed for us by Ms. Sarah Stallard. We go right into it.
Okay, this workshop, Closing the Gap. Our goal is to explore and identify opportunities to engage in the first language of each deaf and hard of hearing person, allowing their language competence to really soar. We believe students will only realize their true academic potential if their first language is appreciated and enriched. They're given every opportunity to acquire new learning, and they're given that first language rich environment. For example, a student whose first language is ASL is placed in a rich ASL environment. She will thrive as they acquire English.
Awesome, thank you. And MaryAnn will just go over our meeting norms really quickly. Okay, I think MaryAnn is having some trouble seeing the screen. So folks, just to cover that, the normal expectations are that if your camera is on, we are in a professional environment, so be mindful of that. Please mute your mics unless you are going to address the session, and use the chat feature if you need to ask a question. Now, what are we going to be doing tonight? If you read ahead, you would know that for tonight, we're not going to be presenting heavy research and a lot of vocabulary, no. We are going to be sharing presentations, contributions from parents, teachers, and students who shared their experience with us, and I'll share it with you tonight. In these videos, they share their best practices, what they consider to be best practices in language development, how they came to be where they are today. And what I'm going to ask is that everybody in attendance will contribute to the Padlets, because following each presentation, each contribution, there will be a Padlet appearing, and you will enter the key takeaways, the key points from what the parent, teacher, or student said in the video. Then we'll touch on what the research has to say. And to close off the evening, we're going to look at what our efforts are within the Closing the Language Gaps group. What are we doing? What are we working towards for the future? So I'm not sure if MaryAnn is having trouble seeing the screen or seeing the interpreter. So this is where MaryAnn would share this with you. Can you verify that MaryAnn can see our screen, please?
I can see her now. Yes. Can you
Okay,
see me
cool.
now? Is that better? I can see you now. Good. Yeah, I think we can see each other. We can see each other now. Thank you.
All right, so we don't want to go into too much vocabulary, as we said. So we're going to touch on some words that you're going to be hearing or seeing tonight within the documents that are to come. And the first term is language development. What are we talking about when we talk about language development? Language development in this context tonight refers to the process through which children acquire or learn language. This usually happens in a fairly consistent order or sequence, without requiring explicit teaching or effort from others. Typically, children will learn by being surrounded by others, speaking and communicating with them socially. Now, when we hear L1, we hear of L1, it is usually your first language, the native language, the mother tongue. One's native language. MaryAnn, you wanted to go ahead?
So I've noticed that there are three different categories here. Perhaps you're learning a language at home or at school. And then there's another group, some like the exposure, like there's no real exposure at home. And then there's another group where you have both language, Spanish, English. And that's a challenging group to teach that group there because they're individuals, they're all different. And to teach like the L1 group, just making those adjustments. It's so different as far as their language development is concerned.
So your L2 is usually your second language. So if you're a first language speaker of English and you're acquiring American Sign Language, and the American Sign Language would be your L2. Now, when we talk about a critical period, you heard about this from Maya on Tuesday. And here we say that critical period in language acquisition or development, a great deal of evidence suggests that it is more difficult to learn a new language as an adult than as a child. I think we can all attest to this. Some of us are using, what is it called? The apps on our phone to learn a second language. And it's not so easy now in our older age, I'm sure you'll all attest. Now, the length of this period, the critical period, is not set. I know that it is said, as Maya said on Tuesday, it is between 0 and 5 that it is optimal time for you to learn a language. But research varies on this. And as you'll see from one of the presenters today, who acquired his L4 actually at a very late stage in life and did quite well. But then again, the sooner, the better is what the research tells us. So we have a number of contributors. When we were preparing for this presentation this evening, we reached out to a number of people within PGCPS, outside of PGCPS, and we got immediate responses. Some of these people, they're listed on the screen now, and I want to celebrate them. I want to thank them. We heard from parent Brenda Perodin, her son Emmanuel, Chang Hwang, who is a Korean American, Maya Yamada, who presented on Tuesday. She also made a video. MaryAnn, who is with us, my co-presenter, she made a video to share her experience as well. Kirill Stallard and her daughter, Sarah, who signed the purpose statement for us. And I'm most excited about these two contributors, Ingrid Escalante, who is a parent of ours in PGCPS. She's going to be providing a perspective from an L1 Spanish family. And she was working on this. We just didn't get it in time for tonight's presentation, but she put her hand up immediately. She says, yes, I'll do it. We also heard from Mrs. Grady, Alicia Grady. She has a child in PGCPS. She says she will make her contribution indeed. And this might be in the form of a video or an article. But what we're seeing here is the embracing of the different types of students that we have within the deaf and hard of hearing unit. We serve students who not only use ASL, we have students who have a hearing loss, but they also need support. And their first language is not ASL, and they're pursuing mastery of English. Then we have students who have a hearing loss, and they also have additional disabilities. And we want to get all our parents involved in this discussion, all our teachers and all our stakeholders. So if you don't mind, if you could turn your cameras on for just a moment and just a hand wave to these people, parents, everyone who has volunteered and offered to contribute tonight. Let us celebrate them, really. We are happy to have it. We want authentic contributors. And hey, hats off to all our parents. And you know, some of these contributors are unable to be here tonight, and we're glad to have the video, but some of them do plan on attending. So I want to let them know that we are celebrating them and we do appreciate their contribution. We're going to jump right into the very first one, and this is from Ms. Perodin, Berenda. A point of order though, can I see in the chat, the videos are captioned. Do you also want the interpreter to voice over, or is it satisfactory for you just to read the captions? Would you like the voiceover? Can you say this in the chat, please? Or do you want to just read the chat, read the captions?
Yeah, the interpreter is fine.
Okay, so we'll do both. Thank you.
No, Miss Houston said voiceover, please.
Okay then.
Hello. My name is Brenda Perodin, and I'm originally from Louisiana. My mom is deaf, my father is hearing. There are 8 children, 7 are deaf or hard of hearing, and 1 is hearing. We all sign. We grew up using both spoken language and ASL both. My mother is a fluent signer, and we would communicate with her, sim-comming, a variety of different ways. We use SimCom. All of my brothers and sisters, we would all sign to each other. Now, in a residential school, I was at the Louisiana School for the Deaf in Baton Rouge. Of the 8 children, 4 of us went to Baton Rouge, the LSD. And eventually, I went to Gallaudet for kindergarten. The Kendall School, Kendall Demonstration Elementary School. And that's where I was working. And Kendall is on the campus of Gallaudet University in DC. I've been teaching for 25 years in the parent infant program. And there I've worked with both hearing and deaf parents. And I think that language acquisition is so important in the home. I have a deaf child and a hard of hearing child, and I always sign with them. They both use their hearing aids. My family and I, we use our hearing aids as well. When I sign at home, I use American Sign Language. However, if I need auditory-based sources, we'll use audiobooks, radio, music, you know, then we can listen through our hearing aids. It's so important. Language acquisition in the home is so very important. We read books, we sign, we add details, we explain everything. We also make sure that we have access to various sources of language by watching, providing a model, and even looking for help for resources. And I encourage parents, I encourage you in the sign community, communicate with your children. Do so many different things in order to meet deaf and hard of hearing parents. That's so important. Get to know the deaf community. Take advantage of the resources that they share. And my son will talk more about his experience.
Awesome, thank you. Now, just another point of order. So I noticed that the subtitles, the Zoom subtitles, sometimes cover up the subtitles from the video. So if you can take off the, you can turn off the
doubled almost. Yeah, it's doubled.
Yeah, you can turn off the subtitles from Zoom. Just go to the More section and click Hide Subtitles. And for those who wish to just pay attention to the subtitles, then you can also turn the volume off so that you are not hearing the interpreter. Now, what's going to happen next? From Brenda's presentation, we want to go to our Padlet. And this is where we're going to share thoughts on what Brenda just. Let me capture this for you. Copy the link address, and I'll put it in the chat so you can all go to the Padlet. So the link is in the chat. Please click on the link. It will take you to the Padlet. And just jot down for me, what are the key points that Brenda just made? And you may choose to identify yourselves or remain anonymous. But please, as questions appear as well, you have the option to respond to that person, because we are the researchers tonight. We are the experts. Agreed. So I have seen that research, and I have seen it where it has been stated that the critical period is indeed from 0 to 5 years of age. And then there's also research that counters that to say that that information was based on, was normed on not necessarily on the acquisition of American Sign Language, but spoken languages only. So it varies depending on what research you're going to go with. But I do believe that the prime thinking is that it is optimal for you to learn the language between the ages of 0 and birth to 5 years of age. So you can enter your information in both the first two columns, the key takeaways, enter them in either the first or the second one. Any questions you have, anything you want to add in the last column, please do. Signing in the home is extremely important. Access to a full language early in development and throughout the day-to-day events is important, yes. And if anybody needs help accessing the Padlet or how to use it, just send me a message in the chat. Ah, anybody to offer a response to this question? How do we help change the narrative for deaf children born to hearing parents? Some parents themselves are trying to learn. To clarify, I'm asking this question now to the person who posted this. When you ask about how do we change the narrative of deaf children born to hearing parents, are you saying that there's a negative view of these parents? Negative perception that they're not trying or what? Okay.
So let me say something here. I think that parents, when they get the information from the doctors, the medical providers, and then when they meet deaf people outside, they honestly don't know. It's like there's something missing. Things kind of get covered over and they're asking the question, what am I going to do? What's going to happen in the future? How do I support my children? You're going from what the doctor says and all these medical options. You're trying to figure out what options to choose. What's the best one? Research information. Oh my golly, there's so much information, so many resources that can be gotten. And it's kind of like there's a block and it's like, you have no idea. And so the problem comes in teaching the children and meeting deaf people and being exposed to the community, the culture, and it just depends on, again, depends on your daily life at home, working, so many things that are happening that kind of block that access and that acquisition of knowledge.
Thank you, MaryAnn. And I just add with regards to this comment that we will be providing some information on how parents can access classes and that sort of thing. Say the parents simply have a different language. So the parent may be English first or Spanish first. Whatever it is, if it's a hearing parent, then there are avenues for that parent to either learn sign language. If you embrace American Sign Language, you want your child to learn American Sign Language, you yourself are trying to learn American Sign Language, then through these groups we just mentioned, the family support groups, we provide information on how you can get there. But one of the first avenues you should be thinking of is to especially work with your child. If your child is at a stage where they know some sign language, then you can take classes with the child and together you forge ahead. I hope that makes some sense and it is helpful. Let me see. Respecting the parents and welcome them into the deaf community is important. All right, thank you. Let's move on to the next one. The next presentation is by Brenda's son. This is Emmanuel.
Hi, my name is Emmanuel Paraden Njoku. I graduated from RIT in 2018 with a Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Science. And I work at the National Institutes of Health, the National Cancer Institute, as a post-baccalaureate research fellow. I identify as a deaf person. I come from a deaf family. Growing up, I went to the school for the deaf. I went to Kendall Demonstration Elementary School, just Kendall for short, there on Gallaudet's campus in Washington, D.C. My first language at home was ASL, but also English came pretty soon right after that. My parents are both deaf, so I have always had sign language from birth. A biggest reinforcement for my acquisition of both ASL and English came from my parents. Growing up, I often read books. They read books to me in ASL until I was able to read independently. And reading became just a big hobby of mine, and I developed a love for reading. And that love has really helped me during my school years, especially in English classes and my evolving understanding of the English language. I built my language in two ways: ASL skills through daily interactions with my peers, teachers, friends. And I've also had speech therapy that has helped me to understand and process auditory-based information in the environment, and has also helped me to appreciate the nuances of the English language. For instance, speech therapy helped me to better understand how written English isn't verbatim spoken English. It's not the same. They share similarities, but they differ from each other, like that kind of thing. I also mentioned that I took speech therapy. Growing up, I wore hearing aids for a while in elementary and middle school. I didn't wear hearing aids, but outside of that time, except for that, I've always worn hearing aids. Like I say, really, it's more to access the world auditorily and to understand what's happening, like incidental information, not necessarily for communication, but just to kind of help in the incidental information. So as far as challenges for my language, as I look back, I don't really recall any major challenges, other than what I would say, the social biases towards spoken English, spoken language in general. Like there's often a lack of knowledge, and that's probably the biggest challenge that I've faced as far as my language acquisition was concerned. Yep, that's it. As for my attitude, the fact that I attended the school where they place significant emphasis on bilingual education in their curriculum, it helped both my ASL and my English skills to just soar. The people I interacted with, such as my peers and teachers, varied in their signing skills from new signers to fluent signers. They introduced me to a range of signing skills, styles, and fluency, and that really helped me with being a deaf person. I use sign language, and it's not a problem. That's who I am. But rather something that adds to my experience in life and allows me to appreciate things from a unique perspective. Like a lot of hearing people who don't know sign language, like they don't have that perspective. Also with my extended family, some sign, some don't. But they accept me. They showed me that they embrace my deafness and all the variants of signing that comes with it. And accepting that diversity within the deaf experience, that's normal. There are variants of signing that also come. And so we have to access language, and our goal really is being understood. So like I say, in a sense, the deaf game perspective, that's in my psyche. That's who I am. Growing up, my English proficiency was assessed in annual standard assessments, those tests every year. And so I was consistently above grade level in reading and writing. Again, that's because I loved reading, loved it. I had such a passion for reading. That was true all the way from kindergarten up to 12th grade. My reading comprehension and writing skills were always up to snuff, and I never really had a problem with them. For those of you hearing people with deaf and hard of hearing children, I want to remind you, there is no one size fits all. I really want to let you know that, yeah, there's no one size that fits all. We're all individuals. And you have to know how your child communicates. Research shows, of course, adding sign language to your current method of communication, there's no harm in it. There's no detrimental effects. So I really encourage you, take the opportunity to learn sign language. It's going to add such richness to your child's perception of the world, and their view of the world. It's going to give them more communication options for you and for all those who are around them. Also, be sure as your child grows and their language grows, check in with them. Make sure that you're communicating with them and that your current style is what they're using. Ask them what they prefer, what accommodations they want. Make sure that they're involved in the process and that they're understanding language and you're understanding them. Because the real thing is being a team. That's really what it's all about. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. I can't.
Yes, that was beautiful, wasn't it? And I hope it is encouraging to some parents, especially that from we do beat upon parents sometimes. They're not doing enough. And as Emmanuel says, we're all in this together. And we're going to just capture the main points from Emmanuel's talk just now. We're going to go to another Padlet. And again, I'm forgetting to share the Padlet first. So this Padlet is shared now in the chat. Please click on the link. What are the key takeaways from what Emmanuel just shared with us?
Yes, 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 yes. That's good.
There was a lot to take away from what he just said. I'm sure you all have something that you can enter into the takeaways. What are the key points that Emmanuel just made? Remember, you can use the first two columns to enter the takeaways and then ask any other questions and advice in the second two columns.
We had some folks that entered theirs on the original Padlet, Mr. Parkinson.
Oh, is that what's happening?
We had a couple folks who entered. We had one who said developing a love for reading is important and signing in the home is extremely important. They used the other Padlet.
Thank you. Folks, let's use this one. This new link that I put in the chat, it's for Emmanuel. I do want to preserve the comments so that we can share for those who are not here tonight. is evidence of the benefits of early language access. I so agree, yes. The habit of reading early in his life. His parents read to him, and that transferred into his own love of reading and writing. Having family embrace you and how you communicate. His exposure to ASL and English at an early age. A language-rich environment is so important. All right, and in the interest of time, thank you for those of you who entered something. I'm surprised. We have, now remember, not just parents, but attendees, everybody, please contribute something. Now, Chang Wong, he is an immigrant. He is from Korea. And this gives us a good idea as to what it's like for someone who is not a native speaker of English. He doesn't know ASL. And still he managed to soar. And he was someone who, he came here, as he will tell you, in his teens. So without further ado, let's hear from Chang Wong.
Hi, I'm Chang Wong. I'm 26 years of age.
Just one sec.
Okay. I was born in South Korea. I came here to the States at 17 years of age. My family is small. My dad, my mom, and my sister. There's just 4 of us. And we spoke Korean at home. I was born deaf. As far as I know, I'm the only person who uses signs in my home. I usually communicate with my family by speaking Korean. Let's see, you want to know how my parents found out I was deaf? I wasn't fully deaf. I was hard of hearing. My mom suspected that my hearing wasn't quite like the other hearing kids. But my dad he was just in denial. He didn't really want to pursue the truth about hearing loss. But my mom, she mentioned visiting a larger hospital. Didn't matter how expensive it was. My dad still thought, it's a waste of money, and he ignored my mom's suggestions. They brought me to a local hospital with cheaper hearing tests. And the local hospital didn't have the advanced technologies to really test my hearing ability, not deeply, not in the detail. They just diagnosed, okay, he's deaf and you've got some hearing ability. That was it. The smaller hospital, they didn't diagnose me. So it took a few years. And finally, I was placed in the 1st grade in a hearing school. My classroom teacher suspected something's not quite right here. So the teacher kept trying to call my names while they stood behind me, but I didn't respond. She kept saying, CJ, CJ, but there was no response. So she told my mom, she said, something's not normal. So my mom decided to go ahead, take me to the larger hospital for more hearing tests, more detail. So there, the doctor, found out that I had some hearing ability, but not regular hearing. So when they found out that I was deaf, I used a hearing aid for just a few years. Just for a few years. Then I stopped using it in 3rd grade. My attitude was kind of passive and negative. I had this identity confusion until I came to MSSD, the Model Secondary School for the Deaf. They are so grateful. I got the best education that I've ever had in my life so far. Before that transfer, I was just accepting the fact that I couldn't learn anything in a hearing school in Korea, since nobody tried to figure out what kind of accessibility I would need for school. All I did in school, I just showed up and I just sat zoned out all day long, just daydreaming. It was just meaningless. I was just trying to escape this meaningless life I was living. So then I joined the tennis team. That was a new life. Been in the 3rd grade. And I stayed there until 8th grade. I wasn't going to any classes, just most of my time at tennis. I didn't have any opportunities, but I needed to find out who I was. I needed to find out what was my real identity. So I decided to come to America. I had to learn all these English words, all this new vocabulary. I had to figure out what's this, what's that, what does that mean? I didn't memorize all the terms. I couldn't do all that. I couldn't memorize everything all at once. I had to wait till I got to the dictionary. So sometimes I just kept a small notebook with me with a pen, and I just wrote things down. I'd see a new word, I forget it. I just had to write down every day. I was writing new words in my notebook every day. See, what would I have liked for my parents to have done differently? They hadn't been so obsessive about, that I'm different from hearing people because I'm deaf. I wish that they hadn't done that. It made it difficult for me to overcome my identity confusion, even as a youngster. I was trying to figure out who I was. I had to overcome that identity confusion. So before I got to MSSD, I had a very negative view of what deafness was about. We're different from hearing people. So negative. But when I finally transferred to MSSD, I started feeling like myself. I worried less about being different in the hearing than from people in the hearing community. So there I started to feel more comfortable with who I am. Also, I wish my family members knew more about what it was like to be deaf. Just kind of on the surface, just understanding I was deaf, they assumed raising their voices louder would help me to understand what they were saying. If they yelled at me, no, I still don't get what you're saying. Or some of them tried to put their mouths close to my ears. No, that was uncomfortable. I just couldn't seem to get along with my family. Parents with kids who are deaf and hard of hearing, don't focus on the hearing ability. It's more important to focus on helping them to acquire language. That's really critical for their future in education. Make sure they have a strong self-esteem. Teach your kids how to be proud of themselves. Don't compare them to somebody else. The strong sense of identity and who they are, that's so important. Inspire them to learn something new, become more creative people. They can do that. They should expose their children to new experiences. Let them participate in a variety of programs and activities. If they're having fun while they're learning, they might be more proactive. The more experiences they have, it'll create a solid foundation for your kids toward a better future as they grow. I grew up in South Korea with so little access. I never had a chance to watch Korean TV or watch movies or the drama of theater for years. I watched international movies. the Korean language, there wasn't any subtitles. So I had to watch through Netflix with English subtitles. That's how I watched the movies. After graduation, I wanted to build so many more experiences through the team accessibility. That's the project we were working on for the deaf community in South Korea.
Again, very, and as someone said in the chat, coming from people who lived the experience and them being able to share with us what it was like. I would love to hear from more of us who are attending today. We only have like 6 minutes to go. So we're not going to do the Padlet for Chang, for CJ, but there was something he raised. He said his advice to parents, well, looking back, he said he wished that what? His parents would. And please, if you remember and you have something to contribute, you want to say it out loud, please do so. You can say it in the chat as well. He said that his parents took the time to understand what it meant to be deaf. How would one go about that? If you can open your cameras, please, and we can have a discussion about it. Anybody with an idea? How do parents go about, a hearing parent, how do hearing parents go about learning what it's like to be deaf? What advice would you give to a hearing parent who's saying, what do you mean by helping me find out what it's like to be deaf? Anybody, any suggestions?
Ms. Rollins said, be more supportive and less comparison.
Thank you.
If I could comment?
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so I think when I was first, well, I'll back up. French was my second language, and then ASL was my third, and then ASL quickly replaced French because of the amount of use and exposure before I ever start working. And then I have deaf in my family. And so for me, learning to be deaf, if I could be so bold as to say that, is using my English less and less and less unless I am going from ASL into spoken English. So how I do that is I spend more time around deaf peers, deaf friends, and less time around people who only use English. And so I don't put one language down over the other. I spend time in the environment where I need them, I'll use an academic term, more scaffolding. And so because English is native to me, that just comes naturally. I spend more time in the community where I work, and that's in the deaf community. So I think the place where you learn is from native users and from people who that language is just natural, it's instinctive, it's intrinsic. That's how you learn.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sharon. And I also see, but you see, I don't want it to come so much from those of us here who are hearing, but I'd love to hear from our deaf participants as well. Because put your stamp of approval on what Sharon just said, or if you can add something to it. Jermica offered something in the comments. She says, join classes with your children on how to learn ASL and support their losses. Thank you, Jermica. And CJ, I know him personally. And one thing I know is, my sense is that deaf people don't want you to, they want you to do more than learn the language, but they also want you to experience what they experience and be more understanding about what it is they face on a daily basis. And as Sharon just said, it comes from integrating yourself, being a part of the community on a regular basis. Stephanie, in the comments, My very first language was ASL before English. I barely understood English until Gallaudet. I strongly agree with CJ's experiences. Yes, indeed. And we're almost out of time, but please keep the comments coming. And if you want to keep adding to the Padlet, they will be posted. And I'm going to share with you that source where you can actually go to add your comments. So as you see on screen, there's also a video by Maya. And there's well, I showed you the list earlier, but we also preserve all these videos, ladies and gentlemen, on our website. And this link I'll share with everyone. Let me share it from here so I can put it in the chat. All right, I'll get to the link in a second. So on the website, there are a number of articles that provide resources for parents and those of us, all stakeholders in general. You can find the videos from Chang, Emmanuel. We didn't share Sarah's video, another beautiful video by Sarah. And as I said, we have PGCPS, our own parents here, Spanish language, multiple challenges in addition to being deaf. These are to appear shortly. Please go in, access them. If you know the parents, reach out to them, commend them, and tell them, show them some appreciation. This was in such a short time, and for them to just immediately say, yes, we're on board with you, we'll do it. I really do appreciate them. There's also a page for our Spanish first parents, videos and literature in Spanish, available to you in your own language. This is what? This is a page in English. If you scroll down, there are a number of articles here, very interesting articles. Then you find the link to the Spanish page, the page in Spanish. Videos and resources, as I said, in Spanish. And we also have students who have, with the hearing loss, they also have a vision loss. So here are some resources. There are some webinars upcoming in April and in May. I will be attending some of them because I love the topics, and I have students who I work with who have vision loss. So this is important to me. You might want to check this out as well. So we're covering the gamut. We want to serve everybody that we work with within the county. Go in, look around, provide some feedback, make suggestions. But most importantly, guys, there's one thing that we didn't touch on, and I was waiting to see if anybody would mention it. And somebody did actually say something about tracking of his progress. Data is key. If you notice, Emmanuel mentioned about being above grade level throughout his school life. He knew what his reading level was. He always knew. And that is because he took the SAT 10 on a regular basis and he could track his own progress. The same thing for Chang Jun. He didn't mention, Chang Jun didn't go into what he did personally, but he took summers off and he worked on his English, didn't go out and have fun like everybody else, but he wanted to catch up. He came here at age 17. He needed to improve his English. So he took the SAT 10, found his grade level and worked to pull it up. He constantly asked, how am I doing now? He wasn't putting pressure on the students so much. That's not what data does. As it says right here, data is one of the most powerful tools to inform, engage, and create opportunities for students along their education journey. And it's much more than test scores. Data helps us make connections that lead to insights and improvements. Everyone has an important role to play in helping all students succeed in their own individualized ways. So this is our effort now. This is one of the one area we're going to push on is to find the data and find ways to get our students invested in tracking their own progress. How are they doing? We want parents to also be involved. Ask questions. How is my child doing now? What is the reading level they're at? And target the improvement, reasonable improvement, so that it doesn't put pressure on the child. Can I hear an amen? Anybody in agreement in the chat? Do you agree data is important? Any comments about the resources here before we go? I want to find the link for you before we go. Please add some final comments before you go, please. Any questions you have, last minute comments? Let us know. Awesome. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you, Jermica, Shay, Sharon. So I know that the resources we shared tonight will be shared with you, the PowerPoint, but I'm putting the link to our website in the chat. So if you want to go in and peruse some more, see the remaining videos that you didn't get to see tonight, that link is in the chat. A summary of what we did is you guys contributed to the Padlet. We're going to summarize that and also put it on our page so that those who are absent can have it to look at. And that's pretty much it. Again, a round of applause to our contributors. I really applaud them. Thank them for coming in so quickly at the last minute. And I gave them like early March and they got it in ahead of schedule.
Well, thank you so much. What great information. And we appreciate everyone who turned out tonight. We know it's a long week and it's Friday on a Friday evening. And yes, I will be sending an email out early next week that will have all of the links that you put in the chat, as well as the PowerPoint presentation. And our conference website will have the video coming up sometime next week.
Awesome. Thanks to my co-presenter and thanks to everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.